coming to you from the Hudson Media Group studios. This is Talking Politics, and I am the professor, Fernando Uribe. There's a lot to cover, so let's get started. This is what I'm thinking about right now. Folks, a state shutdown could indeed be inevitable, and it's only with less than a month to go. Now, currently right now, whether you live in Hudson County or anywhere, the state budget seems to be dominating the headlines throughout the Garden State, and the three major power players are nowhere near being anywhere in agreement. I'm talking about Governor Phil Murphy, the President of the State Senate, Steve Sweeney, and the Speaker of the State Assembly, Craig Coughlin. Now, some recent articles have indicated that, again, by June 30th, both chambers of the legislature have to pass a budget and then submit it for Governor Murphy's signature. If he fails to do so before midnight on June 30th and at 12:01 a.m. on July 1st, the state will indeed shut down. If you remember back on July 1st, 2017, the state shut down for a couple of days. So whether it was funny memes about then Governor Chris Christie or even vital state agencies shutting down, it was no laughing matter. Even back in 2006, when then Governor John Corzine experienced a state shutdown for nearly a week, it also put New Jersey residents in peril. Whether it was state beaches being closed down, motor vehicle agencies not available for residents to renew their licenses or other vital paperwork, indeed the state shutting down was not good for New Jersey residents. And it seems like with less than a month to go, that could be on the horizon as well. And one of the things I really wanted to cover with you today, folks, is at least, what's at the heart of the matter? Who's right and who's wrong during this pissing contest between the three most powerful Democrats in the state of New Jersey? As we know, Governor Murphy is very, very staunch in his position about the millionaire's tax and trying to integrate it into the state's budget. Now, for many New Jersey residents, and to the surprise of even some Republicans, Democrats such as Steve Sweeney and Craig Coughlin are trying to control the governor's spending. Who would have thought it? Democrats complaining about spending here in the Garden State. Now, while Governor Murphy has never met a tax he's never liked, the reality is that Steve Sweeney and Craig Coughlin are trying to reduce spending, even consolidate some services, and quite frankly, bring some very much needed relief for New Jersey taxpayers. Now, folks, one of the things that really sort of disappoints me about what's going on in New Jersey is that it is indeed becoming unaffordable. And it has become for some time. And even despite recent reports from Reuters or even other news outlets that the tax revenue coming in for the month of April was indeed quite plentiful for New Jersey, it still doesn't solve the major problem of how much we spend. And quite frankly, it does a disservice to all New Jersey residents, both homeowners, renters, taxpayers, and the like. When we think about what it takes to live here, it's actually quite alarming. I know some people working 2, even 3 jobs to try to live in New Jersey, and that's not what this should be about. And when I think about Governor Murphy's position about taxing millionaires, well, I understand that he's a millionaire. He doesn't mind taking sort of the financial hit, and he feels that other millionaires in New Jersey will feel the same way. The problem is, though, there's only so many millionaires you can tax until A, they decide to leave New Jersey, or B, are no longer millionaires and are indeed in that tax bracket. But on the flip side, we see State Senate President Steve Sweeney and Assembly Speaker Coughlin trying to rein in some spending, trying to bring in some property tax relief, which we desperately need, and also trying to at least consolidate some other services that, quite frankly, many New Jerseyans possibly don't need any further. Now, listen, I don't know where you stand ideologically, but one of the things that's interesting about this sort of Democratic civil war here in the Garden State is the fact that just because there's a D next to your name doesn't necessarily mean you're the same kind of Democrat. We're seeing that with the very liberal Governor Murphy, and of course, the more fiscally moderate Democrats, such as Steve Sweeney and Craig Coughlin. Now, again, Republicans and even some Democrats in the legislature seem to be forced to have to take sides during this battle right now. Now, we don't know where this is going to end, but quite frankly, folks, when we think about the state budget, when we think about how much the state spends, it's quite alarming. Now, I don't know about you, but when it comes to managing our own finances, it's vital for us to do so. Otherwise, we'll just go under. And it seems like New Jersey's headed down that same fiscal path. Now, one of the things that, what I've tried to sort of reassess here on my weekly podcast on Blog Talk Radio is the idea of, quite frankly, what's the best fiscal route that Trenton can take for us? One of the talking points I've heard for many years is that New Jersey is unaffordable. And it seems to be like this sort of narrative out there that, let's blame Washington. Let's blame who's in the White House. Well, folks, here's a news flash for you. This predates Donald Trump. This predates Barack Obama. This even predates George W. Bush. Here's a news flash for all my listeners and all my viewers here tonight. Folks, there's one party that's occupied the legislature as a majority, and more so a very strong majority, since 2001. It's not Republicans that are dominating Trenton, it's the Democrats. Now, again, I'm not here to sort of smear either party because both parties are at fault about what's going on in New Jersey and when it comes to spending. But quite frankly, as June 30th approaches, I hope that Governor Murphy, Steve Sweeney, and Craig Coughlin get their act together. You know, there's always pressure on us as homeowners and taxpayers to have our house in order. You know what? I'm hoping that these three powerful Democrats and all of the members of the legislature can follow that same ideology. Because you know what? If we need to sort of manage our pocketbooks, Trenton should be able to do the same. And if they don't, quite frankly, shame on them. I'll certainly keep you posted in the weeks ahead as to where the budget battle will be, sort of ensuing. But make no mistake about it, folks. Trenton needs to do better for us, for homeowners, for taxpayers, for New Jerseyans. And if they don't, you know what? In the years ahead, when it comes election time, we might need to make some very tough choices. You know what? We expect them out of Trenton. You know what? And we expect them now. And that's what I'm thinking about right now, here on Talking Politics. Folks, in the most recent edition of Talking the Hudson, my weekly podcast with Blog Talk Radio, which you can listen to live every Wednesday night, live at 9 p.m. by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson, was the esteemed chairwoman of the Hudson County Democratic Organization, Amy DeGise. Now, she had a lot to say during the hour-long interview, but here are some highlights that really stood out for me. First and foremost, as she approaches 1 year on the job as the chairwoman for the Hudson County Democratic Organization, a lot's changed in her life, a lot's changed in the party, and more so, a lot's changed in Hudson County. Let's hear what she had to say about that.
This turnout at the Harborside Atrium for the Hudson County Democratic Organization, and I have to tell you, I've had you on this program since you took office last year after winning the reorg meeting in June. It's funny how it's already a year later. How
oh my God, I know.
Yeah, but it's quite a testament, Amy, and we've talked about it on this program a lot, about the leadership that, quite frankly, was put under the microscope and how you'd be scrutinized, how you'd be tested. And from all results we're seeing, Amy, I think that you and your father, especially your dad, has to be proud because I think you've exceeded a lot of expectations as the chairwoman for the HCDO. Looking back almost a year later now, what are your thoughts about how you feel right now in your position within the HCDO?
Oh, man. Looking back, it is a lot of what I expected and a lot of what I haven't expected. I think being able to be in touch with the local officials and let them kind of know what the boots on the ground are talking about and how to connect with advocacy groups and advocates. That was definitely a goal during the campaign, and that's something that we've been bringing out more and more. And it's had great reception with the elected officials who, do want to stay focused on advocacy and, what the community wants, but sometimes, don't have direct connections and venues to talk to them, and sometimes it conflicts with some of their goals, and they're only hearing one side of the story. So some of my expectations were, was I going to be able to be a diplomat in situations that people weren't going to be able to agree upon all the time. And I kind of like that role now. And it works sometimes, and other times, you can't figure out a good solution right away. But, you hang in there and you stick to your guns and you do what you think is right.
There's no doubt that Chairwoman DeGise is ecstatic, she's energized, and she's ready to continue getting to work in Hudson County. Now, moving along, though, during the discussion, we talked about sort of a sense of relief that not only she had, but the rest of the HCDO had when it came to the West New York mayoral election at the start of the month. Certainly the New Beginnings ticket, led by Commissioner Gabriel Rodriguez, came out victorious on May 14th, but it wasn't without some pressure, and she certainly felt it. And she told us why it was so important for the New Beginnings ticket to win in West New York. Let's hear what she had to say.
I was not surprised in West New York with the result, nor was I surprised about the margin. I knew that the margin would be under 1,000 votes. It was, but it really was a testament. Even with the awful weather that Tuesday, even with the rain,
I know.
It didn't stop people from.
I know.
It didn't stop people from getting to the polls, and especially in West New York. Was there a sense of relief to some extent about not only the New Beginnings ticket winning, but was it sort of like a breath of relief for you and maybe the HCDO and even Representative Siri, who I know all of you put a lot of work into this campaign, and a lot of people said, hey, listen, this might be another test to Chairwoman DeGise's political capital, and again, the results came out in your favor. It came out in the favor of U.S. Representative Sears. But that night, did you feel any pressure though about the Western campaign specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. It did feel kind of like a test. Were we gonna be able to pull this off? And at the end, I'm like, should I have been here more? Should I have done more? Could I have done more? What didn't we cover? And you kind of feel that pressure. And you're right. I was outside of one of the schools with now Mayor Gabe Rodriguez, and it starts pouring, and it's that kind of after work time where people are on their way home from work, and now it's starting to rain. Are they going to say, hey, you know what, I'd rather just go home and try and find a parking spot. I'm not going to even try and go to the polls. And you get stressed out, and you hope that you had enough people come out early on for you. And I think everyone, all good candidates say you run unopposed or you run scared. We ran scared. We made sure that we had a solid platform. The candidates were out there every day with the committee people. I mean, they were taking kind of notes out of Nick Sacco's book on his campaign strategies. We were utilizing new technology. Jonathan Castaneda is, a tech whiz. So he was really able to access some of that, like the voter database with us, and utilize some of the resources that we now have as an organization that were really kind of untapped because they use a lot of the old school methods, not really embracing some of the new technology that's out there. But you have a really young team, you have a young ticket, you have a lot of young committee people that were working on this campaign that really wanted to utilize what the organization had to offer. So it wasn't just like us being out there or us endorsing, but the organization provided, such substantial resources to make sure we were targeting the right voters. At the end of the day, I knew that we were going to be successful, and I thought maybe 4 out of 5, would be the worst case scenario. And we kind of had that in our heads, some of us, because we did see some polling numbers, and we were talking to people, and, we're saying, I think Gabe is good. I think Cosmo's good. I think Margarita's good, but maybe we're okay. We'll be able to, get himself in. So when the results came out, we were just overjoyed, and we felt like all of our hard work paid off. Not saying that the other side didn't work hard themselves, but I think like once you invest so much time and energy into something, when you're successful, I mean, it's just exuberant. And we were really, really happy, and I'm walking to town hall with them and everything. And then also like Nick Sacco's having his kind of rally as well. So it's just like the governor texted and said, congratulations. And I was like, I'm so sorry for the noise complaints that you're going to get out of Hudson County tonight, but we are very, very happy. And that was, kind of how we felt after 8:30. We felt that way.
So certainly as one election ends, another one begins. And whether it's primary day coming up in June, or even the city council elections in the Mile Square city of Hoboken later on this fall, Chairman DeGise had a lot to say about, quite frankly, what this election means and how she's in no hurry whatsoever to sort of pick a side, whether it's Mayor Ravi Bala's ticket or the incumbents that are running against Mayor Bala's administration. Certainly, there's a lot to talk about in the Mile Square city, and she didn't pull any punches about how she feels about the upcoming elections in Hoboken.
Amy, but it's a question I've asked you before in other races, and it begs repeating again. Do you feel any pressure as chair, or does the HCD feel any pressure overall when it comes to, who they're going to support, if anyone, coming up in Hoboken this November? I mean, obviously, Mayor Bala is the chief executive of the town. Council members are council members, and, specifically running 5 candidates against incumbents that, quite frankly, don't get along with Mayor Bala, and quite frankly, some specifically don't see eye to eye with him on almost anything. For example, Councilman Mike DeFosco and others as well are being challenged by Mayor Bala's ticket. It may be a little too early, but do you feel any pressure at this time, or does the HCD feel any pressure whatsoever to have to back Mayor Bala's ticket because he's a mayor as opposed to sort of the incumbent council people?
Yeah, I don't feel the pressure quite yet, and we haven't been put under the spotlight for that one. I think we're just kind of getting through the elections of now. But, as an organization, you want to support the mayors that, are supportive of you and the leaders of the cities. And, I really do respect Mayor Bala, and I respect his, leadership down there. It's unfortunate that there has been a disconnect between the council and the mayor, and that we see in the media like a lot of the discord, the arguing, the fighting, the petty stuff. And that's kind of what's coming out of their city hall. And that's unfortunate because they're all working very hard, even though they're not always on the same side. So when we look forward to just the council and that the mayor's not running, you look for ways to have the mayor work with the people who are there now, and again, build consensus, to find a way to make it work. You all want to be successful, and try not to, step on the incumbent council people's toes as well. And I consider a lot of them friends, like Ruben Ramos and Mike DeFusco and Tiffany and Jen, all great leaders down there and all really represent their communities very well. So you don't want to, pick a side and end up, offending someone that you think would be a good leader just because the mayor has chosen them, and you don't want to, go against the mayor at the same time too. So, we're trying to build some sort of system where they can exist together right now, coexist together right now, work together progressively and productively. And then as November approaches, just kind of see what the platforms are for people. But, as of now, like the council that is there, are friends and supporters of our organization. They're involved in our caucuses. They're heavily involved with their committee people. So it would be unfair to say, hey, the mayor doesn't want you as a council person anymore, so we as an organization can't support you. And we will have those discussions with them because we do want to hear about what the community feels like. We do want to hear about what the platforms are. But right now it's a little early.
Lastly, we talked about her strict allegiance to Governor Phil Murphy. As I alluded to on the podcast during the week and even during today's opening monologue, there seems to be a showdown that's inevitable between Governor Phil Murphy, the president of the state Senate, Steve Sweeney, and the speaker of the state assembly, Craig Coughlin. And of course, being a Democrat and as dedicated as she is, she certainly did not be shy at all when it came to how she feels about both Speaker Coughlin and Senate President Steve Sweeney, but more importantly, how she feels that Governor Murphy is right during this budget showdown. Whether it's a millionaire's tax or how to approach state spending overall, Chairwoman DeGise made sure that she told Governor Murphy, I'm with you. Let's see what she had to say about this.
For Amy, and just because there's a D next to your name does not mean that everyone's cut. It does not mean that everyone's cut out of the same cloth when it comes to party. I think that it's been well established that State Assembly Speaker Craig Coughlin and State Senate President Steve Sweeney are very different Democrats than Governor Murphy, and I think we're seeing this showdown right now. And I really want to get your thoughts on this because I think that there's some language out there that the governor seems to be willing to risk a state shutdown if he doesn't get his millionaire's tax once, implemented. And Amy, one of the things that, kind of frustrates me is that, there are just only there's only a certain amount of millionaires you can tax until they start leaving the state or, I don't know, until they're no longer millionaires. But the bottom line is that it seems like a lot of New Jerseyans and even Hudson County residents are saying, wait a minute, it seems like property tax relief could perhaps be on the table, but the governor's willing to hold it ransom or hold it hostage, because he's so insistent on the millionaire's tax. And thus, this is the divide in the Democratic Party in New Jersey between, let's be honest, the most powerful Democrat in the state, Phil Murphy, and the second most powerful Democrat, Steve Sweeney. How do you see this battle, concluding, if ever?
Yeah, and I see what you're saying, how much can we possibly tax someone, and we shouldn't be punishing people who are successful. But, you have large groups of millionaire families saying, tax me. You're right. Do it. You don't have millionaires coming out like, protesting and lobbying against this. And Murphy, he's definitely a millionaire and he's definitely going to have to be taxed. And he understands that and sees the value in those taxes being an investment back into property tax relief and other sources. I think what the key issue here is that Steve Sweeney, how much I care about him, was totally for this same tax not too long ago. So, you know what? If I'm Governor Murphy, I'm going to hold it hostage. Because a few years ago, when it was your idea, it was all well and good, and everybody should go for it. And all of a sudden now, because it's, on my desk, you don't want to sign off on it. Like, you're not going to get me the votes. And I think that we experienced, too, with marijuana legalization that early on, Senate leaders and Assembly leaders were given the nod that give it the go-ahead. It's going to be legalized. We could do this. And then all of a sudden it came to the week to vote. And then it went, I don't think it's going to pass. And the governor's saying, listen, you're setting me up to do what I want to do, and then you pull it away from me. So you're kind of playing with the top Democrat, which, listen, you don't got to invite him to your wedding or your birthday party. You don't got to be nice to him when you see him. You got to work with him. Like, that's why we're elected here. And even though we're different types of Democrats, at the end of the day, if we're all going to build this party, we all have to stick together. And Steve Sweeney is just historically not, a team player. He's a dino. He's a Democrat in name only. He worked with Governor Christie.
You
listen,
said it. Wow. Okay.
I'm done with him because I had to prove it to myself. I said, I'm not losing my mind. You could just Google it. Steve Sweeney millionaire's tax. Go back when Christie was in office and read the editorials that this man put out. Read what he was saying to his community about the benefits of this tax and what it would do for our communities and how it would relieve property taxes and how you'd have better school funding and we could fix the infrastructure. And now all of a sudden it's a bad idea. So, yeah, if I'm the governor, I'm not looking at this as, hey, you want to go back to the negotiating table. I'm looking at you like an obstructionist. So if you're going to, like in Hudson County, like if you're going to, step up to me, I'm going to do the same back to you. Like, he's not a punk, and he's the governor. I wholeheartedly support him and the tax. I'm not a millionaire. I will not be affected by it. But I think that the governor's right on this one.
She had a lot to say about this and much more. Now, you can listen to the entire audio by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking to Hudson. You can listen to it anywhere, anytime, from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. Without a doubt, Chairwoman DeGise is chugging ahead in 2019, and we'll see what happens in elections not only on primary day, but in Hoboken later on this fall, and certainly in 2020. Now to some local stories, folks, I wanted to bring to your attention today, and quite frankly, that deserve some recognition. And first and foremost, I really want to talk about a topic that's really sort of personal to me, and I think to a lot of us, because we're so dependent on ride-sharing services. And in recent headlines here, apparently both Uber and Lyft customers in New Jersey may soon be better protected under a new law after a recent college student's murder. Now again, folks, if you are familiar with the law being passed, at least right now in the legislature, New Jersey is indeed one step away from enacting a law designed to better protect us riders when we order an Uber or Lyft anywhere, anytime. Now again, this comes 2 months after a college student from New Jersey was murdered down in South Carolina after she stepped into a car that she mistakenly believed was indeed the car that she summoned via the ride-sharing app. Now, without a doubt, the bill now will require drivers working for ride-sharing companies to use signs and even a digital barcode to identify themselves in New Jersey. Now, the law will be called Sammy's Law, and it's named after the victim of a recent murder, the 21-year-old Robbinsville native of Samantha Josephson. Now, Josephson's parents and sister were on hand as the state Senate voted 38-0 at the State House in Trenton last week to give a final legislative approval to the measure. The State Assembly voted 77-0 last week also to pass the bill. Now, ultimately, it's up to Governor Murphy to sign the bill into law, and quite frankly, we're hoping that it will indeed happen. Now, there's always a chance he could veto it, but at least from what we can tell, at least sources talking to me every week, inform me that the governor will indeed sign it. Now, the victim's father, Seymour Josephson, called the bill's passage, though bittersweet, though. He said he's been working with members of Congress to pass a similar bill at the federal level, but he said he was very happy that New Jersey lawmakers were so quick to pass one here in honor of her late daughter. Now, hopefully New Jersey becomes the national leader in this, as he told New Jersey Advanced Media last week after being at the State House in Trenton, and certainly wiping away tears, as any parent would, after such a horrible tragedy. He went on to say, quote, "Let's use the technology to help save lives and make sure this doesn't happen again. If this was around then, hopefully Samantha would indeed still be alive." Now, for example, Assemblyman Dan Benson, a Democrat out of Mercer County, and other sponsors introduced the legislation just weeks after Josephson, a student at the University of South Carolina, was killed. Now, Josephson, who was set to graduate this month, had called for an Uber outside a bar near the school in March. But authorities said she got into a stranger's car instead and was later stabbed to death. Her body was found 14 hours later in a field nearly 90 miles away. Both Uber and Lyft already provide customers with a driver's license plate and the number as well as the make and model of the vehicle when they order a ride. Now, the legislation titled A5321 indeed goes a step further and requiring that ride-sharing companies issue drivers at least some sort of reflective or some illuminated marker right on the dashboard so riders can know they're getting into the right vehicle. Certainly, it can be featured on their windshield or at least also on their dashboard. It will also require drivers to have a digital barcode that riders can scan with a smartphone to make sure that indeed the ride that they summon is indeed the car that is coming for them. So whether you're in Atlantic City, folks, even down the shore, down in Hoboken, downtown Jersey City, or even in Morristown, it's important that this law be passed and certainly be signed into law by Governor Murphy. Hopefully, in Samantha's memory, we'll all be safer and better for it. So kudos to the state legislature, and kudos, hopefully, to Governor Murphy once he signs it into law. Hopefully, Sammy's law will continue to save more lives, and hopefully we'll avoid what happened to Sammy back in March down in South Carolina. Folks, on a final note, as you'll be watching this episode online, it's sad to report here in the New York area that 95.5 WPLJ will go off the air on Friday, May the 31st. For more than 40 years, WPLJ occupied our radio waves throughout New Jersey and New York City. I, for one, love all of the great talent that we heard throughout the years, whether it was Scott and Todd in the morning, the hilarious phone scams, the wonderful DJs that would sort of entertain us all day long, and even artists that would debut their music year after year. So when it debuted in 1971, nobody really knew what WPLJ would become. But certainly, some 40-plus years later, here in New York and in New Jersey specifically, we got to enjoy all the wonderful radio and all the great music that we heard throughout the years. You know what? When it comes to WPLJ, they certainly occupy a memory for all of us. They made us laugh. They made us cry. They made us think. But most importantly, they reminded us why we love radio so much. Cheers to WPLJ. You'll always be here, and you'll always be in our memories. Again, mornings, afternoons, and even the drive home won't be the same as 95.5 WPLJ goes off the air forever this year. Well, folks, I want to thank you for joining us here today on Talking Politics. For all the excellent programming such as this, you can always check it out via the Hudson Media Group at their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com and also www.livestream.com/HMGTV. Don't forget to like Hudson Media Group on Facebook and make sure you follow them on Instagram and Twitter. As for my weekly podcast, folks, you can also always check it out on Instagram at Talking to Hudson. You can also like it on Facebook. Also, hit me up on Twitter whenever possible. Let me know what you think about the show. I love your feedback at Professor F. Uribe. And, of course, hit me up on Instagram as well at Professor Fernando Uribe. Again, if we're talking politics, we're doing it right here with the Hudson Media Group. I'm Fernando Uribe. Thank you so much for watching.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. New episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.